Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Mulson's The Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. We're here with a terrific gentleman who's a co-founder of a community bringing over 3 decades of dedication to men's well-being and expert leader in vulnerability and connection, and began his journey from a personal healing to the creation of a wonderful group, which is a men's emotional leadership development. And we'll find out what that is. And basically fueled by the belief in transformational power of authentic communication and community of men. And of course, this program introduces a better revolution with a special solution, basically with scalable solutions, shifting from the traditional analysis over to masculinity to basically a grassroots model where men are trained to support and empower each other. Right now, this is a crisis that needs to be addressed. And this wonderful gentleman we'll talk about, he's also got a book called Grow Up, A Man's Guide to Emotional Masculine Intelligence. Live, ladies and gentlemen, in Plus Studios, somewhere in beautiful Northern California, the co-founder of MELD, which is Men's Emotional Leadership Development. He's also got a book called Grow Up, A Man's Guide to Emotional Masculine Intelligence. So man up, guys. We got the multi-talented Owen Marcus. Owen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Owen. So you're a co-founder of MELD, which is men's emotional leadership development, bringing over 3 decades of dedication to men's well-being and also the expert leader in vulnerability and connection. You began a journey from a personal healing to creation of MELD, and fueled by a belief in transformational power of authentic communication and community, and introduces a bottom-up revolution with scalable solutions from the traditional over to a grassroots model. And we'll find out what it is. Plus, you got a book you also wrote as well, and talk about that. And before getting to all that, Owen, tell us how you first got started.
I got started in this because I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
A little story. I was in a relationship with a woman 30 years ago, and I talked about this at my TEDx talk quite a few years ago. But she was sitting on the couch, and she said she couldn't feel me, and I wasn't arguing with her, but I was trying to convince her, as if it was a debate, that I was being emotional. And then finally, it hit me that I wasn't being emotional; I was being intellectual. That didn't change me, but it made me aware that maybe I needed some help. Started a men's group in my clinic. I had an integrated medical clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona at the time. And one thing led to another. 19 years ago, I was up in Sandpoint, Idaho, up near the Canadian border in a small town. And I decided I wanted another men's group, but I wanted it different than the other ones, different than the traditional men's group. And so a lot of my previous training, my graduate and postgraduate training, had been in what they call psychosomatics, or using the body to help facilitate emotional healing. I studied with some of the original founders of those different therapies, and so I took all that and created a new model that really took off. I just invited 11 guys, they all said yes, and I thought we'd stop there. Well, 19 years later, this group, the Sandpoint Men's Group, has had over 400 men in it. We have over 50 men in it, 5 groups. I'm in one of the groups still, even though I live here. It's a Zoom group for the expats.
Mm-hmm.
And all that evolved into creating a company called Everyman. I founded with a couple of guys, and I brought all this teaching and developed more teaching. And then that wasn't working out. And the beginning of the year, I took my crew, my core group, to MELD to form a new company. And so essentially what we do is we use the physiology of stress. There's a lot of research that backs that up, and we develop ways for men to use their somatic awareness, or awareness of the body, to become more connected to their own experience, their somatic and emotional experience, and thereby connect to others. Because a lot of the work I do is also with couples. My partner's a couples therapist.
That is rather interesting. And what was that one precise moment that simply influenced you into what you're doing? Was it light bulb moments that simply said, "This is it"?
Good question. It was a few light bulbs. It was that conversation with a girlfriend that time. It was doing my men's group in my clinic, which was not good, but I thought there was a potential there. But another light bulb moment was 19 years ago when I asked these guys, and I knew I had to perform. How guys are. We have to perform. And so when I had 11 guys show up in my living room in my straw bale house, And then in a week I knew, oh, I got to come up with something that's going to work. And I didn't know it was going to, but it really did. And I haven't, for 19 years, I haven't stopped developing this model, which is really unique for men and unique for men's work. And with that, we've gotten endorsements from all the top therapists in the country.
Wow, that is something. And of course, I remember, men's group was being, really empowered. I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, Promise Keepers and all that. And that was like, the beginning right there. It kind of tailed off. It seems like it goes up and down, because men's groups have been around for quite some time.
They have, and before that, they were like in the '60s when the women's lib. There was a whole movement. That was sort of the first iteration of men's groups. Robert Bly, the poet, was a big catalyst of that, and that was working primarily with the Jungian archetypes and mythology, and really that was just telling guys it's okay to be a man and it's okay to have emotions, but it didn't go much further. And then there were a few other iterations, but what we're doing is taking off because it's not prescriptive. So we're not telling guys this is how you should be. We're saying, look, we're going to give you the tools that you should have had, we all should have had, but you didn't have. And you can do what you want with these tools. But what happens when these guys have these tools, they're what some people call their emotional intelligence improves. I don't really like that word because it infers that we're not intelligent. And I don't think that's the issue.
It sounds to me emotional intelligence kind of just basically just relates to women. That sounds like so.
Yeah, and it's really developing emotional fluency, but the real problem, well, two real problems why men are in the situation that we're in. We have a history, and now, research is showing there's such a thing as inherited trauma. So we have a history of stress and trauma that impacts us, let alone our own stress and trauma, which can really shut us down and limit us in many different ways. And then we have the cultural phenomena. And what I saw with that is that, we all came from tribes. 10,000 years ago, we were all in tribes. And it was a different deal then. But, we left the tribe for the farm, and 200 years or more ago, we left the farm for the factory. And that's when things really changed because men were gone. So women had to step up. So women stepped up and they raised the boys and took care of the family. And the teachers were women, the nurses, now the therapists. So it's not a conspiracy. It's just that they were the emotional responsible party. So the more feminine perspective of how to be emotional is sort of melded into, what it is to be emotional as a man, where, we go back, thousands of years, and there was really no distinction like that. Men had their own way of being, women had their own way of being, and it worked together because it was actually a balance.
And certainly does this too. And of course, I was thinking about intelligence. I was reading about an article where this guy was leading some groups where women tend to have wires all over the place, and men are just straightforward thinking. So I just reading about that, if that takes part of it or anything like that.
Yeah, I think we all know, men and women, that we process differently. And that's great if we understand that and know how to sort of have our unique or our own intrinsic way of balancing that. The problem is that so often with men, and I was certainly one of them, that I didn't really know what I was feeling, so I couldn't really communicate it. For example, I do these couples workshops, and we do a little teaching, but we break the couples off into their own little dyad, and we go around and support them. And what's really interesting is the guy will think he's talking emotionally to his partner, and he's using emotional words, but she's not feeling it because he's not feeling it. He's analyzing, judging, suggesting, fixing, all the things that we do really well. He's really thinking and trying to be emotional, but he's really not, and she's getting frustrated. And so I say to the fellow, "Hey, Joe, can I just sort of show you how to do this?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I sort of take a deep breath and I channel him in a more masculine, emotional way. Almost inevitably, within 30 seconds, the woman starts crying
Wow.
because she feels me, and she knows that that's what he's trying to feel, but he's not communicating it. Because he's not communicating it, she doesn't really feel it. And then I have him practice it, and he doesn't do as well as me because it's his first go around, but he's starting to get it, and she starts to downregulate or relax, and they start to connect. So it's not just this, but a big part of it is men, we were never taught, we never had models on how to communicate in an emotional way. And when we do, guys pick it up pretty quickly.
And of course, back to like, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years ago, there was also a hierarchy too, whereas this everything's like, top to bottom, you do this and do that and everything. Do you think that probably created more of a stress when it comes trying to connect in women at the time? Or do you think it's somewhere gotten away, it's gotten easier, or in social media times, quick selfies, instant gratification, and whatever else? Do you think it's gotten a lot more difficult all the time, or is it getting a little more easier and everything like that, especially social media, instant fix?
I think on the whole, it's gotten easier. I mean, it's loosened it up some, but made it crazier. I think one of the problems with social media, we are wired for connection, and that comes out of all the research around what they call attachment theory. And so when we don't get connection, we real connection, we go for pseudo junk connection. It's like when we can't get real food, we go for junk food. And
Right.
it sort of feeds us, but it doesn't nourish us. And that's often what social media does. And so men and women want to connect, but we just don't know how to do that. And one of the things that has to happen or makes it a lot easier is that both of us need to feel safe. And there's a whole set of studies and physiology about what does it take for men and women to feel safe.
And certainly indeed as well too. And of course, being safe and everything else. Of course, there's a crisis going on with safety, mental wellness, health, and everything like that. And how can it be addressed with Owen Marcus of MELD? We'll find out just 1 minute. But first, you listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SonicWeb Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those who love be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews, and even loved and endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forbes Riley, and Menez. So grab your copy today for Girls Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com and our 40 podcast platforms. Heard in 100 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music, Odyssey. Subscribe to us on BitChute, Rumble, YouTube as well, and follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and more. Make sure you take us with you on any mobile device. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com for your loved ones. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles. Also t-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Check it out today and support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here with the co-founder of MELD, Owen Marcus, here on the Mike Wagner Show, and also has a book you'll be getting to later, Grow Up, A Man's Guide to Emotional Masculine Intelligence. And, before we continue on with the MELD program, and of course, there's a lot of crises that's going on in the world, and this one has not been talked about. It's a silent one of men's mental wellness, mental health, and why it is so important. Healing, growth, everything like that. And it's been lately neglected.
It has. And what's happened in the last few years, the media and even government, we have a Surgeon General that did a big study on loneliness and, was really championing that, we're dying, literally dying because of loneliness, and particularly men. And middle-aged men and often men in rural areas. They're the worst. And they did a study in Montana, just not too far from where I was living in Idaho, on how men, in rural areas really did not have connection. But in a bigger sense, what's happened now is it's okay to say that men are having problems. It hasn't been okay. And then there's a fellow that we had on our program several months ago. He's a Brookings scholar. He's an English dude. His name is Richard Reeves, and he wrote a book called Of Boys and Men. And so you will say he's sort of a scientist. He didn't do the research, but he scoured all the research and he put it all together. And his thesis is that we're leaving boys and men behind. And we are. We are. The culture is, the institutions are, government, education. I think by now most people know that more women are graduating from schools, particularly professional schools, than men, and guys are just giving up. And so he's looking at, what's causing that, and he analyzes, what's causing it, and he has some solutions. But one of the interesting things he says, which I would agree with, is that our traditional view is getting it wrong. So the liberals think that anytime that you go help a man, you're taking it away from the woman or women.
Really? Oh my gosh.
And I've seen that. And then the conservatives think the solution is we got to take it back to the 50s where, the guy's in charge and the woman just goes along. And I don't think that works. And I don't think the women are going to go for it. I don't think most men want that.
In today's society, it's like, can anybody agree on this? That's the thing. Can anybody agree?
And what we're finding is they're agreeing with our approach because we're neither one of those extremes. And it's a bottom-up approach where we're helping men in a non-prescriptive way. And we're certainly supportive of women. And that's where more and more therapists and women are sending men to us because they care about the men. They know that they need help. They want to help them. And they realize that they might be able to sort of diagnose the problem and realize the guy needs help. But they're also realizing that they're not the best avenue for helping that man. And so there's more and more of these women and therapists, which are usually women, are sending us men because they're starting to see that in one way it's simple. If you give a guy a little training and you give him a safe place to practice some of these things, vis-a-vis, with other guys that are just being authentic, he will get that. There's been a joke in our men's group for years that, the best night for romance is the night that the guy comes home from the men's group because he's really relaxed, he's open, but he's also assertive. He has what I call the assertive vulnerability. He's a man. He's like these women will tell me, he's the guy that I fell in love with.
That's really interesting. And we thought it was from bowling night back in the day, the most romantic. Hey, I scored a strike and a spare. Now we're going to have a strike on you. So spare me. Oh my gosh. I remember back in those days. And of course, you talked about men in rural areas. I remember the days, they live on the farm, rural area. You always got together at a coffee shop, but that has been difficult as well, too. And do you think social media has also created a division in that? And do you think social media can also create it like, by Zoom or say by Facebook groups or anything like that, rural areas? Do you think coffee shops could make a comeback? Is it going to be difficult, easier, or is social media making it more easier or difficult, especially in rural areas? That's a concern.
I think you can take it, if you take it apart, this yes and no. I think in general, social media is making it more difficult in some ways, but it's allowing for connection where you couldn't have it, like across the world and all that, which I'm all for. But the more intimate connection, the more authentic connection, it's sort of taken that away. Now, that said, we've been doing programs for a while, but once COVID hit, we all went virtual because we couldn't meet. And I was really surprised at how effective virtual groups are, virtual trainings are. And they're probably like 80% as effective as live. I think most people prefer the live, but for convenience, cost, scalability, virtual can really work well when you do it the way that we do it, where we slow the guy down, we slow the situation down. It's a safe place, confidentiality. So we have all the components that we have when we're doing a live one. It's just virtual. And it does help, particularly in a small group setting. Guys get a lot. And like I said, I've been in this virtual group for several years, and men have changed tremendously just from being in the group.
And of course, the life's challenges and all the stress going on, it has seemed to really gone up. And it seems like being a man is much more challenging than ever. And you've got the tools and the analysis and everything to do so and to empower that. Maybe get a little bit more about that. And of course, men out there, you might want to listen up on how you can conquer as well, especially if it's on Zoom or Instagram or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, we do programs with Zoom. We've done free ones. We have a simple 4-week course. It's a great introduction. We get a full spectrum of guys. It's just 2 hours every Wednesday, which yeah, we've honed it. They did a big study and they published it like less than 2 months ago in the APA journal, which is American Psychological Association, which is the premier journal. They published this big study they did on our course that I developed years ago. So yeah, we've proven that it works. And so I think here's a simple thing that I developed for guys, which is what I call the ROC formula, ROC. So the R is about relax. Everyone's been telling us to relax, but they don't tell us how to do it.
Yeah.
And simply how we do it is we slow down. And how we slow down is we slow down our physiology. And when a simple way to slow down our, our physiology is just to breathe in a more relaxed way. And we work with men, giving them some simple somatic or body ways to slow down. So when our physiology slows down, the stress response, the survival response, the threat response down regulates or slows down. And so it's easy to, or naturally we relax. And as we relax, we start to, or be more apt to feel our emotions. And that sets us up for the O, which is to open up. And we open up and we become vulnerable. And we become vulnerable to our own experience, like, oh, I'm feeling tightness in my shoulders. Oh, I'm feeling sad. But we also become vulnerable to the person or people we're connecting to. So they start to feel safe. And then this whole science of co-regulation and mirror neurons start to take on, where the other person unconsciously picks up that we're relaxed, so they get relaxed. And we have this positive cycle. And then we go from the openness or the vulnerability to connection. And that C is connection. We reach out or risk connection. And when a man can do that in a vulnerable way, or being present with his emotions and his body, really what's happening for him, inevitably he has a deeper connection. And be it a romantic relationship or business. I work with a lot of executives. We did several programs for Google and Google X, and Google X is their R&D division, that where all these scientists are inventing the next things for Google. And they had us work with their scientists because these are brilliant. Most of them were men, but we just worked with the men, working with these men on how to use their emotional intelligence to be better scientists.
Wow, interesting. So it's not just about the person itself or be more romantic, but it's about be a better business person, a better scientist, and a better self. And what else could be better? Maybe like a better athlete or a better writer or better doctor, whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that talks about, how more efficient we are, no matter what it is, when we're down-regulated, when we're relaxed. Our nervous system shifts from the sympathetic state, which is the stress state, to the parasympathetic, which is what they usually call the rest and digest. So it's like our bodies can rest, our gut can digest. And so when we're there, we're more creative. That's where all healing happens. That's really where all authentic connection happens. And we really, because I used to have this integrated medical clinic, and the biggest thing that I saw, because I used to get a lot of referrals from regular docs, and the people that weren't getting well were inevitably the most stressed out. And so we get them unstressed in an acute way, but also in a chronic way. Most of the time, that's all it took. Their body would heal itself. Quick little story. I had a guy that was sent to me by a doc. He'd fly in like every 2 weeks from Orange County. He bragged about how he was the go-to guy in the world to develop rubber plants. He said, I ate, drank, smoked my way around the world, never been sick in a day in my life. And then he gets sick and no one can figure it out. And this doc thought that, maybe it was stress. So he said, go see Owen. I think he can help you. So I said to him, look, you're really healthy. You're just worn down and it's wearing down your immune system and everything else. You don't know it because it's happened so gradually. But here's the warning. When you start to relax, you're going to be really tired. And so like after 4 sessions with me, he comes in for the fifth session and he just looks different. I said, what's happening? He said, this is literally what he said. You will be the only one that could believe this. I was so tired that I couldn't lift my finger to change the channel on the remote.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Woo.
But a few more weeks later, he was well. But he'd push his body so hard that it finally started to collapse. Now, fortunately, he didn't get cancer or heart disease. He was just exhausted. But once his chronic stress downregulated or relaxed, and when he left that stress state for the relaxed state, all the energy that was going into stress, and I tell guys, it's just like I used to have an old plow truck, and you're driving in town and you push the clutch in, but you're revving the engine, you're not going anyplace. And if you keep doing that, you're going to burn out the engine. And that's sort of where he was going. He was, he had like the brake on but he wasn't going anyplace. But once we downregulated, or he turned down his RPMs, all that energy that was just going no place other than getting tenser went into healing his body. Now that's, a somewhat simplistic and classic example, and it's not always that way for everyone, but that just illustrates how, particularly for men, a lot of our problems, and we don't realize it because it's happened so gradually, and all the guys around us are the same, that we're stressed out. And if we're really going to get well, often in a physical way, but also in an emotional way, we have to deal with that stress.
And I thought about it too when you mentioned about lowering the body, relaxing, and everything. And of course, people juggling demands and everything. It's just like men are screaming about I need space, I need some time, and everything like that. And for those men who are having a very difficult time trying to find space, time, or trying to figure out, hey, I need some time. It's like, what's probably the best approach, and say, hey, I need to do this. It's like, trying to find space and everything else. It's like, it's difficult.
It's real difficult. And that is one of the problems today. Even though we have all these luxuries and appliances and these amazing phones, we are under more stress because there's more demands for us, there's more distractions. I'm an older guy, and when I grew up, women didn't work. And I'm saying it from the perspective of that most of them didn't need to work. But now in most families, the women needs to work, which it's great that they can, but it's unfortunate that a family needs to have two incomes. So, and I think people are starting to realize that, which is, the politicians are making all these promises, but they're not really delivering. And over the years, we just get more stressed out. And yeah, some of it is mutable to change. We can work with some of that.
And of course, your program does offer a lot of change, going from the traditional to the grassroots and everything. And how does this differ from all the other programs? And making a big change in it.
Yeah, we're going to be working with a hospital system on working with men in recovery, because there's a lot of guys that are into some kind of addiction as a coping mechanism, as a survival strategy, that they want to leave, and maybe they're not the addict, but they really haven't fully recovered. I mean, they're not doing the behavior, but they haven't been able to address what drove the behavior. And so we were approached about creating a program that would address that, because we've had ad hoc some good results with guys that really wanted to get on the other side of their addiction and truly recover, and it's possible. And there's a fellow named Johan Harari. He's an English dude, brilliant guy. He wrote several books. One of them is called Connection. It's come out, I don't know, maybe in the last 6 years, where he really unpacked that whole thing, because he was addicted to drugs, the pharmaceutical drugs, the antidepressants and all that, and told that that's what he needed. And what he realized, that was quite the opposite. And through his own experience and working with, or talking to people, and really going and talking to all the experts and reading the research, he realized, and I would agree, that probably in most cases, ultimately, the biggest cause of addiction is the lack of connection. And
Oh
what he
yeah.
saw was when these guys got connected, the need for the addictive behavior, in many cases, it's dissolved away. And that's been our experience. When men really get connected, yeah, to themselves and to people that care about them, and they can receive that care and they can participate in that interaction, their lives start to change.
That certainly does as well. What about those with PTSD and also for those that are incarcerated in prison?
Well, we're going to go back into a prison. We were going to go into a prison and COVID happened. And I was approached, 2 weeks ago about going into a maximum security prison here in California. But but my real experience is with PTSD. I mean, that's where my first training was with the guy that literally wrote the book on it, Peter Levine. And so over the years, I've worked with a lot of people, a lot of vets with PTSD. And essentially, what happens is we have trauma, but the trauma never leaves us, and it literally gets stored in our body. And so, when that trauma can cycle itself through or complete itself in a physiological way, the trauma leaves the body and then leaves the psyche, and then guys can, downregulate and connect. A quick story around that. Many years ago, I had a fellow that was in special forces and he was leading his platoon behind enemy lines, and
Hmm.
this is in Vietnam, and he was going to ambush a village, and they got ambushed.
Oh,
And so they and him himself too had to immediately take action, without even thinking. And he had to break the neck of a 12-year-old boy.
oh my goodness. Oh,
See, all that came out when I was working with him, and and he held it in his leg, and for like half an hour he just shook and cried. He got to release that trauma after a couple decades, and then the next week I saw him. His chronic hip pain for all those years was completely gone.
wow.
Completely gone, because that's what our bodies do. I mean, that's a very illustrative example of it. And sometimes it's not that obvious, but our bodies hold the trauma, and particularly the fascia, which is that connective tissue that holds everything together. So we sort of know that when we get tense, and we've been tense a long time, we get knots in our body.
Hmm.
Well, you have trauma, the same thing happens. And so when the trauma releases, the body starts to release, or the converse can be true. The body really releases, the trauma releases. And usually it's a more gradual process. Sometimes when we work with guys in our work, it's more dramatic. But over the years, we've worked with a lot of special forces, a lot of men have served in Afghanistan and Iraq that were traumatized. I don't think you could be there and not be traumatized. But some of them severely, and they done everything that the VA or the Navy or the Army could provide, and it wasn't enough. And often they would tell me the best that they could do is give them a big jar of pills.
I've heard that story a lot where it's like, here's some pills, come back next time, whatever it is, and
And
everything
they don't
like
want to do that. And now a lot of these men are using psychedelics, and a lot of that's really working, because what the psychedelic healing, and some people call it the medicine journeys, can do is they can help catalyze or help release that trauma in the body and the unconscious. So the body, the emotions, and the unconscious are sort of three aspects of a same phenomena. And then we have our mental mind, which we'd like to think that that's in control and that we can use our mental mind to fix all this. But the rest of us is not a math problem, and we need to address these three other variables or aspects of ourselves in a way that is more holistic.
And of course, with men connecting on what we talked about, it can be done on a global narrative as well, too. It was done with a few times, but global narrative, it seems to be much bigger than that.
Yeah, when we started doing our stuff after COVID, we would do these calls with these thought leaders, and then we'd do a breakout group, and we literally get people from all over, guys from all over the world. It was just men, and we put them in a breakout group on Zoom for like 10, 15 minutes with like 3 or 4 guys, and they'd come back and go, I just talked to these guys, told them things I've never told anyone, or I haven't said in decades. Can I get that guy's phone number? And these guys are literally all over the world, but that's how hungry we are, particularly with COVID, for connection. And when you can find a guy that's being real, you'll be real. And then you're real, he'll be more real. And that's what we see in our trainings. Real quickly, guys, once they realize it's safe, they go, I'm all in. And here's a little thing. We're competitive as guys.
Oh,
And
yes.
so what happens is one guy has the courage to reveal something, to just be more authentic or vulnerable, and he doesn't get shamed. He actually gets honored all the time. I never seen someone get
Wow.
shamed. Every time he gets honored. And then these other guys go, well, hell, I can outdo you. I can be more vulnerable. I can reveal more. Uh, and that almost inevitably happens. And then, by the end, these guys go, I want to go again.
They're like
Because,
this.
yeah, because it's like, I see that, being real is really, in this context, a huge asset. And I get honored for it. I get, points for being authentic.
And certainly authentic indeed. And of course, we tell everybody to grow up, which is a man's guide to emotional masculine intelligence. It is a book, by the way, from Owen Marcus. We'll talk more about that. You're listening to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios, and brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Moses Missing. We'll be back with the founder of MELD, Owen Marcus, after this time. We're back with the amazing, multi-talented Owen Marcus on the Mike Wagner Show, the co-founder of MELD, which is the Men's Emotional Leadership Development Program, and also you're an author as well too of Grow Up: A Man's Guide to Emotional Masculine Intelligence, and tell us more about that, including the 9 phases of development.
So what I realized, Mike, is that there are 9 phases. I mean, honestly, I created them, so it's somewhat relative. I'm not saying that, they're written in stone, but essentially what happens is as we grow up, trauma or stress happens, or lack of attachment, or, like our parents aren't there for us in the way that we need, or society distorts us in some way. And so as we grow up, we have these places that we really don't get what we need. And it creates like a hole in our maturation. And what happens is that hole is like, or a weak link in our emotional chain, and that link breaks, or we fall into those holes. And so the book sort of lays out, okay, what are these phases or parts of our maturation? And we all have a phase or two that for circumstances out of our control, we're weak, or we didn't get what we needed, this emotional nourishment or whatever it might have been. And so once you understand that, this book sort of gives you ways to understand it and see it, but also ways to go in and with yourself or with others to sort of fill that hole. And it doesn't have to be all the way filled, but it goes from something that we're covering or protecting or compensating for to, in some cases, actually something that becomes an asset. Because when we have to compensate for something or develop coping mechanisms, we're hiding something because we had to, and we had to survive, but inevitably there's some gifts in that. Like for me, I grew up with dyslexia and dyspraxia, which is sort of dyslexia of the body, but also Asperger's syndrome. And so I learned ways to compensate, which limited me in some ways, like in relationships, but allowed me to be creative in other ways. And so when we start to fill the gaps, we're actually more available to use our unique strengths.
And certainly does as well too. And of course, this all ties together. Where can we find the book, and how do the men get involved with the MELD program, and where can you get more information?
So they can find the book, like you can find any book on Amazon and under my name, Owen Marcus. And the company is MELD, MELD dot community, not com, but community, COMMUNITI. And that's the URL, and you'll see everything there. You can read about what we do, why we do it, some of the science, the research, but so the programs we have, and some simple approaches to how to frame being a man today, and how to win at being a man in a way that not only serves you but really serves the people you care about.
And certainly indeed as well too. We're here with Owen Marcus, the co-founder of MELD, the Men's Emotional Leadership Development Program, and also the book Grow Up: A Man's Guide to Emotional Masculine Intelligence on the Mike Wagner Show. Just a few more things, Owen. What else can we expect in 2024 and beyond?
I think gradually this whole thing about men is going to get more press. More people are writing books, which is great. These people are writing books. They're smarter than I am. The unfortunate part is they keep analyzing the problem, which is great. And they come up with more institutional solutions, which is good too. But what we need, and I see the culture getting ready or hungry for this more bottom-up approach, and it's more scalable. How do you work with a guy on a one-to-one basis or one-to-group or many bases to change this? And we perfected over the years a really tight peer-to-peer model. So we train guys how to have these men's groups where you don't need a trained facilitator. Every guy becomes a leader of the group. And most guys, I'd like to say all, but at least most guys have the facilities within them to do that. And once they do that, they get a lot out of it. They start helping other men and they get a really tight community. Because most men, when you ask them, do you have the kind of friends that you had when you're in school or maybe the military? And they go, no, I don't have my real friends. And it's an exception when a guy says, yeah, I still do. Maybe 1 out of 10. But most guys, and this is that loneliness thing, really don't have the friends that they would have had when they were much younger. And when they get in these groups, they have real friends that, would have their back.
And that's very important as well. I mean, we can all use it. I got to say that. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
The teachers that taught me about the body, one was Ron Kurtz. He was a developer of somatic psychotherapy. Peter Levine, we just had on our show a couple of weeks ago. He's a therapist and sort of a scientist that developed somatic experiencing and all the work with trauma. And now Stephen Porges is the researcher that developed all the research around the polyvagal theory, which is really how our bodies work around stress and what you can do about it. So and Sue Johnson, who just died, she's the therapist that developed emotional focused therapy. She died last week. And she was an amazing person, endorsed us. And she was the one that really developed a therapy around connection and how to get couples that were disconnected connected.
And that's very amazing as well. What's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Slow down and connect to your own experience, because what you think is your experience, particularly if you're a guy, is probably not your full experience. And a simple way to do that is, as you're communicating with someone, feel your body. What's your body doing? And if you can feel yourself get tense, that's fine. That's okay. Then go, what do you do? What can you do to relax? Breathe, drop your shoulders, and notice what happens. Notice the feelings that come up when you start to relax, and notice the interaction and how that changes when you start to relax.
And that's very important. We encourage men to relax, be men, and everything like that. This is amazing. We're here with Owen Marcus, the co-founder of MELD, Men's Emotional Leadership Development, and also the book, Grow Up, A Man's Guide to Emotional Masculine Intelligence, here on the Mike Wagner Show. Owen, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot from you. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. We'd love to have you back. Once again, what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase, check out your book, or get involved with the MELD program, or find out more information?
So yeah, meld.com, MELD.com, excuse me, meld.community, MELD.community, fully spelled out. And they'll find us and me and the books on Amazon under Owen Marcus. And yeah, thank you, Mike. This has been a pleasure and an honor.
And great to have you on. Once again, Owen, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. We'd love to have you back. We wish you all the best. And Owen, you definitely have a great future to have you. And let's man up.